Answered in kind, 101. The province I am. There is a province over which I have been granted stewardship, not ownership, not dominion over others, not authority over the thoughts of strangers, nor jurisdiction over their hearts, histories, wounds, motives, secrets, or unseen burdens, only stewardship. And that province is myself, my thoughts, my speech, my conduct, my attention, my willingness or unwillingness to remain awake. This province is not small. Indeed, it may be the largest territory I shall ever explore. Many spend their lives attempting to govern nations, churches, families, movements, ideologies, and enemies, all while remaining absolute foreigners within their own interior kingdom. They know every scandal, but not their own sorrow, every doctrine, but not their own fear, every enemy, but not their own resentment, every prophecy, but not their own projections. And so they wander through life as exiles from themselves. But I've found that the first and last responsibility of any conscious being is sovereignty, not control, sovereignty. Control seeks domination. Sovereignty seeks stewardship. Control wishes to force reality into compliance. Sovereignty learns to stand upright within reality as it unfolds. It is not my province to judge another, not because discernment is impossible, not because actions have no consequences, not because every behavior is equally wise, but because I know not the totality of conditions from which another emerges. I know not what storms shaped them. I know not what grief they swallowed. I know not what terrors they endured. I know not what invisible wars they have been fighting in silence. I know only the angle from which I perceive them, and an angle is not the whole. A perspective is not the totality. A fragment is not the mosaic. How strange it is that we often elevate our partial observations into absolute verdicts. We become magistrates of realities we have never witnessed. We render judgments upon lives we have never lived. We condemn chapters without reading the preceding pages. And then we wonder why peace remains elusive. What practical good has ever come from most judgment? What fruit does it bear? Does it heal? Does it illuminate? Does it reconcile? Or does it merely provide temporary intoxication? For judgment often disguises itself as wisdom while functioning as rumination. A mind circles an event, then circles it again and again, until the repetition itself begins masquerading as insight. But repetition is not understanding. Many have mistaken obsession for wisdom. They replay grievances so frequently that they begin treating them as treasured possessions. Their anger becomes heirloom furniture. Their bitterness becomes interior decor. Their resentment becomes a companion they refuse to evict. And meanwhile, life waits patiently outside the door. How much vitality has humanity surrendered to imaginary conversations? How many hours have been offered as sacrifice to hypothetical arguments? How much life has been exchanged for rehearsals of catastrophes that never arrived? What will they think? What will they say? What do they mean? What are they doing? Do they secretly hate me? Do they secretly envy me? Do they secretly judge me? And the extraordinary thing is that most of these questions never receive answers. The mind simply generates possibilities and then mistakes them for evidence. A phantom becomes a certainty. An assumption becomes a conclusion. A suspicion becomes a worldview. One of the greatest tragedies of human existence may be that people suffer more from interpretation than from reality itself. For reality arrives once. Interpretation can arrive 10,000 times. And interpretation often wears the mask of truth. Yet, if one lacks the courage to ask another directly, what authority does imagination possess? What legitimacy does speculation carry? How many relationships have been poisoned by stories that never happened? How many friendships have dissolved under accusations that existed only within the theater of the mind? The mind is a magnificent servant. It is a disastrous monarch. And many were never taught how to govern it. They were taught obedience, compliance, performance, self-doubt, dependency, but not governance, not discernment, not self-trust, not the sacred pause, that simple pause, that tiny interval between impulse and reaction, that moment in which one asks, what am I feeling? Why am I feeling it? What story am I attaching to it? Is this contraction or expansion? Is this clarity or fear wearing the costume of certainty? Such questions seem simple, yet entire lives change when they are asked sincerely. For many people have inherited voices they mistake for their own. The voice of a parent, the voice of a preacher, the voice of a bully, the voice of an institution, the voice of a culture, the voice of an old wound. And because those voices arrived early, they were mistaken for truth. Yet, familiarity and truth are not synonymous. Something can be familiar for decades and still be false, especially when directed inward. Consider the language many use toward themselves. Observe its brutality. Observe its casual cruelty. Observe how effortlessly some speak to themselves in ways they would never dare speak to a child. And then they wonder why peace feels distant. Words are not trivial. Language is architecture. Speech is masonry. Every sentence lays another stone. The subconscious absorbs declarations with remarkable fidelity. It listens even when the conscious mind has stopped paying attention. And so one must ask, what decrees am I issuing over my own life? What proclamations have I enthroned through repetition? How many prisons were built from sentences? How many freedoms were delayed because someone continually rehearsed their own inadequacy? The spoken word is not magic, or so some would have you believe, though its results can be miraculous or disastrous. It is formative. It shapes attention. It shapes perception. It shapes expectation. It shapes behavior. A person who repeatedly declares themselves broken eventually begins searching for evidence. A person who repeatedly declares themselves worthless eventually becomes a curator of their own diminishment. And so precision becomes an act of compassion, not only toward others, toward oneself. To speak carelessly is easy. To speak consciously is mastery. Not perfection. Mastery. There is a difference. Likewise, there is a difference between guilt and shame. Humanity frequently confuses the two. Healthy guilt says, I acted contrary to my values. Shame says, I am contrary to value. One addresses behavior, the other attacks being. One guides, the other corrodes. Healthy guilt functions like a lighthouse. Unhealthy guilt functions like a dungeon. One illuminates the rocks, the other chains you to them. Many conscientious souls suffer beneath burdens they were never meant to carry. They apologize for existing, apologize for boundaries, apologize for needs, apologize for disagreeing, apologize for occupying space. Meanwhile, those who cause the greatest harm often sleep peacefully. This irony should not be ignored. The people most worried about becoming monsters are rarely the monsters. For conscience itself is evidence of care. The dangerous person is not necessarily the one who has erred. The dangerous person is the one who has ceased examining themselves. The one who no longer asks, was I fair? Did I listen? Could I be mistaken? Did I wound someone? For self-examination is the immune system of the soul. Without it, corruption proceeds unchecked. And yet, examination differs from self-condemnation. One reveals, the other punishes. One clarifies, the other obscures. Many have spent so long wielding shame against themselves that they mistake it for virtue. But self-hatred has never been a spiritual achievement. It has never been evidence of wisdom. It has never been proof of holiness. To despise oneself is not humility. It is merely hostility redirected inward. And hostility, regardless of direction, remains hostility. This is why hatred is such a peculiar thing. People imagine hatred grants power, yet hatred resembles a double-edged blade. One edge always faces outward, the other always faces inward. The wound is mutual, the injury reciprocal. One cannot sustain hatred without continuously feeding it vitality. And that vitality comes from one's own life. One pays for hatred with attention. One pays for hatred with peace. One pays for hatred with presence. The cost is extraordinary, often far greater than the perceived offense. How many people spend years carrying enemies who have long forgotten them? How many remain emotionally tethered to events that ended decades ago? How many continue pulling back the rubber band of resentment until they forget they are holding it? Eventually the hand aches. Eventually exhaustion arrives, and still they cling. Not because hatred is pleasurable, because it became familiar. The human psyche often mistakes familiarity for safety, even when familiarity is suffering. This explains much about the human condition. People cling to certainty, even painful certainty, because uncertainty requires courage. The unknown requires humility. And humility remains one of the most misunderstood virtues. Humility is not self-erasure. Humility is accurate scale. Neither inflation nor diminishment. Neither superiority nor inferiority. Merely proportion. To stand where you stand. To know what you know. To admit what you do not. To remain teachable. To remain permeable to revelation. This is why I find humanity endlessly fascinating. Not because people are simple, because they are impossibly complex. Every person is a cathedral of causes, an ecosystem of influences, a constellation of memories, a procession of victories and wounds, a manuscript still being written. And everywhere I look, I hear little bells, tiny resonances, indications that something remains unseen, a contradiction, an omission, a hidden premise, an inherited assumption, a forgotten grief. Not because I am above anyone, but because curiosity compels me. I turn over stones. I examine roots. I investigate categories. I follow questions. Not to dominate, to understand. For understanding is among the highest forms of reverence, and humanity suffers greatly from category errors. We mistake symbols for realities, maps for territories, descriptions for experiences, fingerprints for the hand. Many worship concepts while ignoring living beings. Many defend doctrines while neglecting compassion. Many protect interpretations while disregarding the testimony standing directly before them. A book may be sacred, but so is a living person. A tradition may be sacred, but so is direct experience. An idea may be sacred, but so is reality itself. If you tell me what is sacred to you, I shall listen. I shall attempt to understand. I shall treat it with care. Can we not offer one another the same courtesy? For perhaps wisdom is not found in possessing the final answer. Perhaps wisdom resides in remaining available to deeper questions. Perhaps truth is less like a monument and more like a horizon. Always present, never exhausted, always visible, never fully reached. And so I return to the province, the territory entrusted to me, this mind, this voice, this body, this moment, this mysterious expression called a life. I need not govern the world. I need not dominate another. I need not win every argument. I need not solve every mystery. But I can remain awake. I can examine myself. I can refine my speech. I can steward my attention. I can refuse unnecessary hatred. I can honor the testimony of those before me. I can remain curious. I can remain teachable. I can remain kind. And if I accomplish even these things imperfectly, I shall have done more than most. For the province I am is vast enough to occupy a lifetime. And sovereignty over oneself remains among the greatest achievements available to any human being. Not because it grants power over others, but because it liberates one from the necessity of seeking it. Praise love and pass the compassion. And don't forget, no matter where you place your attention, you will always be answered in kind. For where you focus, there you are. May the radiance of all infinity be with you for eternity. God bless your divine presence.